Welcome back to the Verified Fears horror family. Tonight, we're taking you on a terrifying journey through 11 disturbing road trip encounters that will make you think twice before driving through remote areas alone. These chilling tales come from the darkest corners of America's forgotten highways, where help is miles away and danger lurks around every bend. From mysterious strangers offering deadly directions to roads that seem to trap travelers in endless loops, each story will leave you questioning what's really waiting out there in the middle of nowhere. Whether you're a seasoned road tripper or someone who prefers the safety of city streets, these encounters will haunt your thoughts long after the video ends. So buckle up, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for some of the most unsettling travel nightmares you'll ever hear. Don't forget to subscribe to Verified Fears for more spine-chilling content that will keep you up at night. And hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest terrifying tales. Let's dive into these disturbing road trip horror stories that prove sometimes the most dangerous part of any journey isn't the destination. It's what you encounter along the way. What started as a romantic cross-country adventure turned into the most terrifying night of our lives when a stranger's helpful directions led us straight into a nightmare. Sometimes the people who seem most eager to help are the ones you should fear the most. I'm Miranda, and this happened to my boyfriend Scott and me about 3 years ago. We were both 22, fresh out of college, and decided to drive from California to New York before starting our adult lives. It seemed like the perfect adventure. Just the two of us, the open road, and endless possibilities ahead. We'd been driving for about 6 hours through Nevada when our GPS suddenly lost signal. 1 minute we were following the blue line on our phones, the next we were staring at spinning wheels and no service messages. Scott pulled over at what looked like an old gas station, though the pumps seemed ancient and there were no other cars around. "Great," Scott muttered, tapping his phone screen. "Mine's completely dead too." That's when we noticed him. An older man, maybe in his 60s, sitting on a folding chair outside the station. He wore faded jeans, work boots, and a baseball cap that had seen better days. His face was weathered but friendly, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You folks look lost," he called out as we approached. His voice had that slow, measured cadence you hear in rural areas. "Our GPS went out," I explained. "We're trying to get to Interstate 80. The man stood up slowly, joints creaking. "Oh, that highway's been under construction for weeks. They got it all torn up about 15 miles ahead. Real mess." He scratched his chin thoughtfully. "But I know these roads like the back of my hand. Been living here 43 years. There's a shortcut that'll save you hours of sitting in traffic." Scott and I exchanged glances. The man seemed genuine enough, and we were already running behind schedule. "That would be amazing," Scott said. "We really appreciate it." The stranger, he introduced himself as Earl, walked over to our car and pointed down a dusty road that branched off from the main highway. "You take that road there. Follow it for about 12 miles until you see a big water tower. Can't miss it, says 'Welcome to Millbrook' on the side. Turn right at the tower and then just keep following the signs. It'll bring you right back to the interstate, maybe 20 miles past all that construction." I felt a little uneasy about leaving the main road, but Earl seemed so confident, so helpful. He even drew a rough map on a napkin, marking the water tower and the turns we needed to make. "Thank you so much," I said as we got back in the car. "You're a lifesaver." Earl smiled and waved as we pulled onto the dusty side road. "Drive safe now, and remember, right turn at the water tower." The road started out fine, just a typical rural highway with farmland on both sides. But after about 20 minutes, the farms disappeared, replaced by scrubland and rocky hills. The pavement gave way to gravel, and then the gravel became just packed dirt with deep ruts. "Are you sure this is right?" I asked Scott. "This doesn't look like a shortcut to anywhere." "Earl said 12 miles to the water tower," Scott replied, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Maybe it just looks rough because it's not a main road." We kept driving, bouncing over potholes and dodging rocks. The sun was getting lower, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. We passed no other cars, no houses, no signs of civilization at all. Just endless scrubland stretching in every direction. After what felt like 20 miles with no water tower in sight, Scott finally pulled over. "This is wrong," he said. "We need to turn around." That's when I noticed something in the side mirror that made my blood run cold. "Scott," I whispered, "there's a truck behind us." He turned to look, and we both saw it. An old pickup truck, maybe a quarter-mile back, just sitting there with its engine running. We'd been so focused on the road ahead that we hadn't noticed when it started following us. "How long has it been there?" Scott asked. "I don't know. I just saw it." My heart was starting to race. "Do you think it's Earl?" Scott put the car in reverse and started backing up to turn around. But the truck immediately started moving toward us, accelerating fast. Scott threw the car into drive and gunned it forward, kicking up a cloud of dust. "What's he doing?" I asked, watching the truck gain on us in the mirror. "I don't know, but we're getting out of here." The dirt road seemed to go on forever, winding through hills and dried creek beds. Our car wasn't made for this terrain. It was a little Honda Civic that scraped bottom on every rock and struggled with the steep inclines. The truck behind us, on the other hand, seemed perfectly at home on the rough road. After another 10 minutes of driving as fast as we dared, our worst fear materialized. The engine started making a horrible grinding noise, then began to smoke. Scott managed to pull over just as it died completely. We sat in stunned silence as the truck pulled up about 50 yards behind us and stopped. The driver's door opened and Earl stepped out. But something was different about him now. The friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by something cold and predatory. "Car trouble?" he called out, walking slowly toward us. Scott's hand was already on his phone. "Still no signal," he whispered. Earl was getting closer, and I could see he was carrying something in his right hand. It looked like a length of rope. "You know," Earl said conversationally, "I've been giving directions to lost travelers for about 15 years now. Amazing how many people trust a friendly face." He was only about 20 feet away now. "This road doesn't go anywhere, by the way. Dead ends about 2 miles ahead at an old mine shaft." "What do you want?" Scott asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Earl smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile from the gas station. "Well, that depends. Your car's not going anywhere, and mine's the only way out. But I might be willing to give you a ride back to civilization." "For a price." "What kind of price?" I asked, though I was terrified to hear the answer. "Let's just say I collect things from travelers. Personal items, jewelry, sometimes more than that." His eyes moved over us in a way that made my skin crawl. "The question is, how badly do you want to get home?" Scott suddenly grabbed my hand and squeezed it twice, our old signal from college that meant, "Be ready to run." I squeezed back once to show I understood. "Okay," Scott said loudly. "Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something out." Earl's smile widened. "Now you're being smart." He took another step closer, rope clearly visible in his hands now. "Now," Scott shouted, We both threw open our doors and ran in opposite directions. I heard Earl curse and saw him hesitate for a moment, unsure which one of us to chase. That hesitation saved us. I ran toward a cluster of boulders while Scott headed for a dried creek bed. "Miranda!" Earl shouted. "You can't run forever. There's nowhere to go out here." I crouched behind the rocks, trying to control my breathing. The sun was almost down now, and shadows were getting longer. I could hear Earl moving around, searching, but I couldn't see him. After what felt like hours, I heard Scott calling my name softly. I followed the sound and found him hiding in a small cave formed by fallen rocks. "We need to wait until he gives up," Scott whispered. "Then we'll try to get back to his truck." We spent the longest night of our lives huddled in that cave, taking turns keeping watch. Every sound made us freeze. The wind through the rocks, small animals moving in the brush. And twice, the sound of Earl calling our names in the darkness. When dawn finally came, we crept out to find Earl's truck gone. Our car was still there, but someone had slashed all 4 tires and broken the windows. On the windshield, written in what looked like mud, were the words, "Next time." It took us 2 days of walking to reach a main road, surviving on a bottle of water and some trail mix we'd left in the car. When we finally got cell service and called for help, the police told us we weren't the first people to report being stranded on that road by a helpful stranger matching Earl's description. They never caught him. For all I know, he's still out there, sitting outside that old gas station, waiting for the next lost travelers to trust his friendly face and helpful directions. Every time Scott and I take a road trip now, we triple-check our GPS batteries and never, ever trust strangers who seem too eager to help. Some shortcuts aren't worth taking, and some help comes with a price you never want to pay. The dead have their own frequency on Highway 101. And I learned that the hard way during what should have been a routine midnight haul. Some roads remember every tragedy that ever happened on them, and they're not done telling those stories. My name's Angelica, and I've been driving 18-wheelers for 8 years now. Started when I was 25 after my divorce. Needed something that would keep me moving and pay decent money. Long-haul trucking isn't glamorous, but it's honest work, and I've always been comfortable with solitude and the open road. This particular run was supposed to be simple. Electronics from Portland to San Francisco, deadline in 36 hours. I'd driven this route dozens of times before, knew every truck stop, every way station, every tricky curve through the Oregon mountains. Highway 101 along the coast was usually my favorite stretch, especially at night when you could see the ocean under moonlight. I was making good time, about 2 hours out of Coos Bay, when I hit the fog bank. It rolled in fast like they do on the Oregon coast, thick and gray, reducing visibility to maybe 20 feet. I slowed down to 45 and turned on my fog lights, settled in for a careful crawl through the mountains. That's when my CB radio crackled to life. "Breaker, breaker, this is Nighthawk eastbound on a 101, mile marker 47. Got a situation here, need immediate assistance." The voice was clear but stressed, definitely another trucker. I checked my GPS. I was coming up on mile marker 47 in about 2 miles. I grabbed my CB handset. "Nighthawk, this is Angel Lady westbound, about 2 miles out from your 20. What's your situation?" Static. Then, "Angel Lady, thank God. Jackknifed on a curve, trailers blocking both lanes. Can't move her, and I can see headlights coming up fast behind me. Someone's gonna get killed if they don't slow down." I knew that curve he was talking about. A sharp left turn around a rocky outcrop with a steep drop-off to the ocean. In this fog, a car doing highway speed wouldn't see a jackknife truck until it was too late. Copy that, Nighthawk. I'll get on the horn to highway patrol and set up some flares behind you. What's your handle and company? Name's Bobby Kellerman, driving for Mountain West Freight. Blue Peterbilt cab, white trailer. And hurry, Angel Lady. I can hear those cars coming. I immediately switched to Channel 9 and called for emergency services, giving them the location and situation. Then I grabbed my emergency flares from behind my seat and started watching for mile marker 47. The fog was so thick I almost missed it. Just a glimpse of the white reflective numbers in my headlights. I pulled over and started walking back with my flares. But something felt wrong. The road was empty. No jackknife truck, no blue Peterbilt, nothing but wet asphalt and fog. I walked the entire curve twice, checking both sides of the road and the shoulder. There was no truck, no debris, no sign of any accident. But I'd heard Bobby Kellerman clear as day, and he'd been specific about his location. Confused, I got back in my cab and tried the CB again. Nighthawk, this is Angel Lady. I'm at mile marker 47, but I don't see you. Did you get moved off the road? Nothing but static. I figured maybe I'd misheard the mile marker number in the poor radio conditions. The fog was playing tricks with sound anyway. Everything seemed muffled and distorted. I continued driving, keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of trouble. About an hour later, I passed mile marker 60 and the fog started to thin. That's when my CB crackled again. Mayday, Mayday. This is Desert Rose southbound on 101, mile marker 47. Rolled my rig, fuel everywhere, fire starting. Need immediate help. A woman's voice this time, panicked and desperate. I grabbed the handset immediately. Desert Rose, this is Angel Lady. I just came through mile marker 47 about an hour ago. Are you sure of your location? Mile marker 47, the curve with the ocean drop-off. Please, the fire's getting bigger. I can't get out. My leg's pinned. I was already hitting my brakes and looking for a place to turn around. But something nagged at me. I'd been through that exact spot twice now, and there had been no accident, no truck, nothing. Desert Rose, what's your real name and company? Sarah Chen, Chen Family Transport. Please hurry. I called 911 again, reported the new emergency, and spent 20 minutes driving back to mile marker 47. Again, nothing. No truck, no fire, no Sarah Chen. Just that same empty curve in the thinning fog. By now I was seriously freaked out. I'd heard 2 different people in distress at the exact same location, but there was no evidence any accidents had occurred. I tried reaching both truckers on the CB, but got no response. I pulled over at the next truck stop and asked around. Other drivers looked at me strangely when I described what I'd heard. You sure it was mile marker 47? Asked an older driver named Pete. That's a bad spot. Real bad. Lost a lot of good people on that curve over the years. What do you mean? Pete's expression grew serious. Bobby Kellerman died there in 2018. Jackknifed in the fog just like you described. Blocked both lanes, and a family of 4 hit him going 60. Killed everyone. My blood ran cold. What about Sarah Chen? Sarah Chen? Pete thought for a moment. Yeah, that was maybe 3 years ago. Rolled her truck on that same curve. Fuel caught fire. They couldn't get her out in time. I felt sick. How many accidents have there been at mile marker 47? Too many to count. They call it Dead Man's Curve locally. Something about the way the fog rolls in, the sharpness of the turn, the drop-off to the ocean. It's a perfect storm for tragedy. I tried to rationalize what was happening. Maybe it was some kind of radio interference, old transmissions somehow getting replayed. But that didn't explain how specific and interactive the conversations had been. I got back on the road, determined to put miles between myself and that cursed stretch of highway. But as I approached mile marker 47 again, I had to pass it to continue my route. My CB came alive once more. This is Mountain Thunder northbound on 101, mile marker 47. Lost my brakes on the grade, can't make the curve, going over the side. Tell my wife I love her. This time I didn't stop. I couldn't. I just kept driving as the voice faded into static. But I did call it into Highway Patrol, giving them the location and situation. The dispatcher's response chilled me to the bone. Ma'am, we have a record of that exact accident. Driver named Jim Morrison, Mountain Thunder Transport. That was in 2015. Over the next few hours, I heard 6 more distress calls, all from mile marker 47. Each one was different voices, different companies, different types of accidents. But they all had one thing in common. According to Highway Patrol records, they had all actually happened, just not recently. Some were from 5 years ago, some from 10, one was from 1997. I later learned that Highway 101's mile marker 47 has claimed over 30 lives in the past 25 years. Every type of accident you can imagine. Jackknifes, rollovers, head-on collisions, vehicles going over the cliff into the ocean. The state has tried everything. Warning signs, reduced speed limits, better guardrails, improved lighting. Nothing seems to help. But here's what really haunts me. I've driven that route 7 more times since that night, and every single time I pass mile marker 47, my CB picks up at least one distress call. Always the same voices, always the same accidents, always from the same location. It's like the road has somehow recorded every tragedy and keeps playing them back, maybe hoping someone will finally be able to help. I've started carrying a notebook now, writing down every name and company I hear. I've researched most of them online, found obituaries, accident reports, news articles. They're all real people who died at that exact spot, sometimes decades ago. Other truckers have started reporting similar experiences. Word gets around in our community, and now most of us avoid that stretch of road at night if we can help it. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Deadlines are deadlines, and freight has to move. The last time I heard from mile marker 47 was 3 weeks ago. A young voice, couldn't have been more than 25. This is Rookie driving for First Chance Transport. Hit black ice at mile marker 47, spun into oncoming traffic. Not gonna make it home tonight. I checked with Highway Patrol the next morning. Jeremy Walsh, 24 years old, driving for First Chance Transport. Fatal accident at mile marker 47 at 2:17 a.m. Exactly when I'd heard his final transmission. The road is still collecting voices, still remembering every tragedy. And somewhere out there, Jeremy's voice is now part of the frequency. Reaching out to drivers who pass through that cursed mile, hoping maybe someone can change what's already happened. Some roads never forget, and mile marker 47 on Highway 101 remembers everything. Sometimes Google Maps takes you places that don't exist on any official records. And my family learned that lesson when we stumbled into a town where leaving isn't really an option. What we thought was a simple navigation error turned into the most terrifying discovery of our lives. Look, I'm not the kind of guy who believes in conspiracy theories or weird small-town horror stories. My name's Marlo. I'm an accountant from Richmond, Virginia. Married to Jovi for 12 years with 2 daughters, Abby who's 10 and Soraya who's 8. We're practical people. We plan our vacations, we follow GPS directions, and we stay at chain hotels with good reviews. This whole nightmare started during our drive back from a camping trip in Shenandoah National Park. We'd had a great week, hiking, roasting marshmallows, the girls actually putting down their phones for more than 5 minutes at a time. It was one of those perfect family moments that you want to preserve forever. We were about 2 hours from home when traffic on I-64 came to a complete standstill. Construction, accident, who knows? But we sat there for 40 minutes watching our fuel gauge drop while the girls started getting restless in the back seat. "Daddy, I need to use the bathroom," Saria announced with that urgency only 8-year-olds can muster. "Me too," Abby chimed in. "And I'm hungry." Jovi pulled up our map app and found what looked like a decent shortcut. State Route 6119 that would take us around the traffic and connect back to I-64 about 30 miles down the road. The app estimated it would save us an hour, and there were several small towns along the route where we could stop for gas and bathrooms. "Looks good to me," I said, taking the next exit. Route 619 started out normal enough. Typical Virginia back road, 2 lanes winding through farmland and patches of forest. The kind of road we'd driven hundreds of times before. But after about 20 minutes, something felt off. The farms were too perfect, like something from a postcard. Every house was immaculate, every fence was freshly painted, every yard was manicured like a golf course. "These people really take pride in their property," Jovi commented, looking out at a particularly pristine red barn. That's when we saw the sign. "Welcome to Millfield, Virginia. Population 847. Founded 1952. A perfect place to call home." "I've never heard of Millfield," Jovi said, pulling up her phone. "And I thought I knew all the towns around here." She tried to search for it online, but we had no cell service. Not unusual for rural Virginia, but something about the silence felt unnatural. No bird sounds, no insects, just the hum of our engine and the whisper of wind through perfectly spaced oak trees. The town itself was like stepping back in time, or into a movie set. Main Street was lined with shops that looked like they were from the 1950s. Miller's Hardware, Betty's Diner, Millfield 5 and Dime. Every building was painted in cheerful pastels, every window sparkled, every sidewalk was free of cracks or weeds. And everyone we saw was smiling. "This place is adorable," Jovi said as we pulled up to what looked like the only gas station. "It's like Mayberry come to life." A man in his 50s emerged from the station as soon as we stopped. He wore a crisp white shirt, bow tie, and had the kind of artificial smile you see on game show hosts. "Welcome to Millfield," he called out cheerfully. "I'm Frank Patterson, and I just know you're going to love our little community. Let me fill that tank for you." "Thanks," I said, getting out to stretch my legs. "We're just passing through, but this is a beautiful town." "Oh, everybody says that." Frank's smile somehow got even wider. "Most folks who visit end up staying. There's just something special about Millfield." While Frank pumped our gas, Jovi took the girls into the station to use the restroom. They came back out looking puzzled. "That was weird," Abby whispered to me. The bathroom had really old stuff in it, like from Grandma's house, and the lady inside kept asking if we were planning to stay long. Frank finished with the gas and handed me the receipt. I noticed something odd. There was no credit card processing fee, no tax, and the price per gallon was $2.89. Gas hadn't been that cheap in years. "Frank, this price seems low," I said. "Oh, we like to keep things affordable for our residents and visitors. Part of what makes Millfield special." I tried to pay with my credit card, but Frank waved it away. "Don't worry about it. Consider it a welcome gift. We hope you'll stick around and get to know the community." Something about his insistence made me uncomfortable. Actually, we need to get home. Which way back to I-64? Frank's smile faltered for just a moment. I-64? Well, let me think. You came in on Route 619, right? Right. You know, I think there might be some construction on that road. Let me ask around. See what the best route would be. He walked back into the station, and I could see him talking animatedly with the woman behind the counter. Both kept glancing at our car. "Daddy, can we get some snacks?" Saria asked. "I saw they have those cookies I like." "Sure, but make it quick." While the girls went back inside, I walked around the station, stretching and trying to get a better sense of our location. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Every single mailbox I could see had the same last name. Patterson. 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 House after house, mailbox after mailbox. Patterson. 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 Jovi noticed my expression when I came back to the car. "What's wrong?" "Look at the mailboxes," I whispered. Her eyes widened as she scanned the street. That's really strange." Frank came back out with an elderly man who looked like an older version of himself. "This is my father, George Patterson. He's lived here his whole life, knows every road in the county." George Patterson had the same unsettling smile as his son. "I'm afraid there's bad news about getting back to I-64 tonight. There's been a landslide on Route 619, completely blocked. Won't be cleared until tomorrow at the earliest." "What about other roads?" I asked. "Well, there are some back roads, but they're pretty treacherous in the dark. Easy to get lost, and some of them wash out pretty regularly. I'd strongly recommend staying the night. We've got a lovely bed and breakfast, the Patterson Inn." "Patterson Inn?" Jovi repeated quietly. "Everything's run by the Patterson family," Frank explained proudly. "We've been the backbone of this community for generations. There's about 50 of us in town now." 50 Pattersons in a town of 847 people. I was starting to understand why Millfield felt so uniform, so controlled. "I think we'll chance the back roads," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "We really need to get home tonight." George's smile disappeared entirely. "I'm sorry, but I can't recommend that. For your family's safety, of course. The Patterson Inn really is your best option." It wasn't a suggestion anymore. It was an instruction. "Where exactly are these back roads?" I pressed. "Well, you'd have to go through the Patterson property to reach them. Private land, you understand. We don't allow unauthorized access." I felt Jovi's hand slip into mine, squeezing tightly. The girls had come back out of the station and were standing close to us, sensing the tension. "So our only option is to stay at your inn?" "For tonight, yes. But I have a feeling you might decide to stay longer once you see how wonderful Millfield really is." "Most people do." I looked around Main Street again. Every person I could see was watching us now. Men, women, children, all with those same artificial smiles. All, presumably, Pattersons. "What happened to the non-Patterson families?" I asked. George and Frank exchanged a look. "Well, most of them decided to move on over the years. Found opportunities elsewhere. The Patterson family just stayed. We've always been committed to making Millfield the perfect place to live." "And the people who decide they want to leave?" Another exchange of looks. "Why would anyone want to leave paradise?" Frank asked, but his smile had turned cold. That's when I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Our car keys were no longer in the ignition where I'd left them. "Looking for these?" George held up our keys, still smiling. Frank grabbed them when you were walking around. For safekeeping, you understand. Wouldn't want anyone to accidentally drive off before experiencing all that Millfield has to offer. I felt Jovi's grip on my hand tighten. And I could hear Abby's breathing getting faster. Her anxiety was kicking in. "Give us our keys back," I said firmly. "Oh, you'll get them back," George assured me. "Tomorrow morning, after you've had a chance to really appreciate our community. Most visitors find that one night is enough to convince them to stay permanently." "And if we don't want to stay?" The smile vanished completely from George's face. "Everyone wants to stay in Millfield eventually, Mr. Roberts. It just takes some people longer to realize it than others." How did he know my name? I'd never introduced myself. That's when I understood. This wasn't just a strange town with peculiar customs. This was a trap, and we'd driven right into it. The weirdest part wasn't that the gas station felt frozen in time, or that the food was decades expired. It was realizing we weren't the first college kids to get stranded there. Some places exist in the spaces between reality, and you don't know you're trapped until it's way too late to leave. Okay, so this is going to sound absolutely insane. But I swear on my grandmother's grave that every word of this is true. I'm Kenzie Jr. at University of Illinois, and this happened to me and my roommate Oakley during spring break last year. We were driving back to campus from her hometown in Missouri. Just two broke college students trying to save money by driving through the night instead of stopping at a hotel. Oakley's this super practical pre-med student, like she color codes her notes and has her life planned out until she's 40. I'm more of a go-with-the-flow art major, but we balance each other out pretty well. Point is, neither of us are the type to make up stories or see things that aren't there. We'd been driving for about 6 hours, taking turns behind the wheel, when we hit this stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. You know the kind. Just flat farmland stretching forever. No lights except our headlights. That weird middle-of-the-night feeling where you start questioning if you're even still in the real world. "We need gas," Oakley said, checking the gauge. "We're running on fumes." I looked around at the endless darkness. There's nothing out here. We haven't seen a gas station for like an hour. That's when we saw it. A glow on the horizon that slowly resolved into the neon sign of a gas station. It looked like an oasis in the desert. This bright island of light, surrounded by absolute darkness. "Thank God," I muttered, pulling off the highway. The place was called Murphy's Last Stop, according to the faded sign, and it had that retro look like something from the 1980s. Not trendy retro, actually old retro, like it had been sitting there untouched for decades. The gas pumps were the old kind where you had to pay inside first, and there were no digital displays, just mechanical numbers that clicked when they moved. "This place is straight out of a time warp," Oakley said as we pulled up to the pumps. The fluorescent lights inside flickered occasionally, and I could see one person behind the counter. A guy who looked maybe 40, wearing a uniform shirt that said Murphy's in faded letters. He was just standing there, perfectly still, staring straight ahead like he was waiting for something. "Okay, that's a little creepy," I said. "He's probably just bored. It's 3 in the morning in the middle of nowhere." We got out of the car, and I started trying to figure out how the ancient gas pump worked, while Oakley went inside to pay. She came back out after a few minutes, looking confused. "So, that was weird," she said. "The guy inside, I don't think he blinked the entire time I was talking to him. And when I asked how much for gas, he just said, 'However much you need,' and didn't ask for payment." Free gas? I'm not complaining. That's not the weird part. Kenzie, look at this. She held up a bag of chips she'd bought. The expiration date was from 1987. I stopped pumping gas and stared at the bag. That's probably just a printing error. I thought so too until I looked around the store. Everything in there is expired. Not just a little expired. We're talking decades. There's milk from 1993, bread from 1989, candy bars from the Carter administration. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Maybe it's some kind of novelty thing, like a museum or something? At 3 a.m. on a random highway in Illinois? The gas pump clicked off. Apparently we'd filled up, though I hadn't been paying attention to how much we'd pumped. I tried to read the total, but the numbers seemed fuzzy, like I was looking at them through water. Let's just get out of here, I said. That's when we discovered our first real problem. The car wouldn't start. I turned the key and got absolutely nothing. No engine turnover, no clicking, no lights on the dashboard. It was like the car had just died. You've got to be kidding me, Oakley said. It was running fine 5 minutes ago. I popped the hood and looked inside. But I don't know anything about cars beyond checking the oil. Everything looked normal, but what did I know? I'll ask the guy inside if he has jumper cables or knows a mechanic, I said. I'm coming with you. The inside of the gas station was even weirder than the expired food. The fluorescent lights buzzed constantly, and everything had this yellow, sickly tint like the lighting in old photographs. The shelves were fully stocked, but like Oakley said, everything was ancient. Newspapers from the Reagan era, soda brands I'd never heard of, even the cash register looked like something from a museum. The clerk was still standing in exactly the same position, staring straight ahead. Up close, I could see his name tag said Dennis, and his uniform looked clean but somehow old, like it had been sitting in a closet for 30 years. "Excuse me, Dennis," I said. "Our car won't start. Do you have jumper cables or know anyone who could help?" Dennis turned his head toward me with this mechanical precision, like he was a robot just powering on. His eyes were completely blank, like looking into a doll's eyes. "Car troubles are common here," he said in this flat, emotionless voice. "Most people end up staying until morning. Is there a mechanic nearby?" "No mechanics, no other services, just Murphy's last stop." Oakley grabbed my arm. "Kenzie, look at this." She was pointing at a bulletin board near the door covered with photos and handwritten notes. But these weren't normal bulletin board things. They were missing person flyers. Dozens of them, all featuring young people, all with dates going back years. Sarah and Mike Thompson, last seen March 15, 2019, driving through Illinois. Jessica Martinez, disappeared May 3, 2017, car found abandoned at rural gas station. David and Rachel Kim, missing since August 12, 2020, last known location, Highway 136. My hands started shaking as I read more of them. College students, young couples, all disappeared on highways in the middle of nowhere, all around the same age as us. "Dennis," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "what happened to these people?" "They stayed until morning," he replied in that same flat tone. "Most people do." "What do you mean they stayed? Where did they stay?" "Here, at Murphy's last stop. There are rooms in the back." For the first time since we'd arrived, Dennis smiled. It was the most unsettling thing I'd ever seen. His mouth curved up, but his eyes stayed completely dead. "I think we'll wait in our car," Oakley said quickly. "Car won't start," Dennis said. I turned it off. The casual way he said it made my blood freeze. "You what?" I turned it off. People drive away too quickly sometimes. Don't give Murphy's last stop a proper chance. I looked at Oakley and saw my own terror reflected in her eyes. This wasn't a broken-down car or bad luck. This was deliberate. "Turn it back on," I demanded. "In the morning, when you're ready to leave." "We're ready to leave now." Dennis's smile got wider. "No one leaves Murphy's last stop at night. Too dangerous. Too many accidents on these dark roads. Better to stay until morning." "What if we refuse?" "No one refuses. Everyone sees the wisdom eventually." That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Behind Dennis, mounted on the wall, were car keys. Dozens and dozens of car keys hanging on little hooks, each with a tag. I could see part of one tag that said Sarah and Mike Thompson. These weren't just missing people. They were prisoners, and their cars were trophies. "Oakley," I whispered, "we need to run." "Can't run far," Dennis said, apparently hearing me despite my whisper. "Nearest town is 40 miles. Nothing but empty highway in every direction. Dark out there. Cold. Dangerous. People must come looking for the missing people," Oakley said. "Police, families. Police come sometimes, but they never find Murphy's last stop when they're looking for it. Funny how that works." I was starting to understand. This place wasn't just some creepy gas station. It existed in some kind of gap, some space between normal reality where people could disappear without a trace. "How long have you been here, Dennis?" "Since 1987. That was my first night shift. Been the night shift ever since." 36 years. He'd been trapped here for 36 years, and now he was the one doing the trapping. "The room's in the back," I said. "Are there people there now?" 7 guests currently. They're sleeping. Been sleeping for a while now. Peaceful sleep." Oakley grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. "What happens to people who try to leave?" Dennis's smile faded. "They get lost in the dark. Roads out there change when you're not looking. Turn back on themselves, lead you in circles. Eventually, you end up back here. Everyone does." "And if we stay?" "You join the family, like I did, like all the others did. Time works differently at Murphy's last stop. One night can last a very long time." That's when the lights went out. In the sudden darkness, I heard Dennis moving, but it didn't sound like footsteps. It sounded like something heavier, more mechanical, like machinery winding up. "Running time," Oakley whispered. We bolted for the door. The road to my father's funeral disappeared somewhere between grief and reality, taking me into a Louisiana nightmare where the laws of physics don't apply. When someone you love dies, sometimes the world breaks a little, and you fall through the cracks into something that shouldn't exist. My name is Aya, and I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened. I'm not crazy. I don't do drugs, and I've driven from New Orleans to my childhood home in Thibodaux probably 200 times in my 34 years. I know every curve, every bridge, every gas station on Highway 90 like I know my own heartbeat. Which is why what happened 3 months ago still keeps me awake at night. My father had a massive heart attack on a Tuesday morning while working in his garden. One minute he was planting tomatoes, the next minute he was gone. The call came while I was at work at the hospital where I'm a nurse practitioner. And I remember the exact moment my world tilted sideways. You never think you're going to get that call, even when your parents are in their 70s. The funeral was scheduled for Friday, which gave me 3 days to make arrangements and drive down from New Orleans. I'd taken bereavement leave, handled the logistics with the funeral home, called all the relatives. Everything was organized, controlled, manageable. The way I handle trauma at work, the way I've always handled crisis. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about conversations I'd never have with him, things I'd never get to say. Around midnight, I decided to just drive down early. Being in motion felt better than lying in bed staring at the ceiling, and I figured I could help my mother with last-minute preparations. The storm hit about 20 minutes into the drive. Louisiana storms in April can be violent. And this one came out of nowhere. 1 minute clear skies, the next minute horizontal rain and wind that rocked my Honda. But I've driven through worse, and honestly, the storm matched my mood. Everything felt chaotic and out of control anyway. That's when things started getting strange. I was on Highway 90, just past Butte, when I noticed the first inconsistency. There should have been a truck stop at exit 17. I'd stopped there for coffee dozens of times. But when I reached that exit, there was nothing but swamp on both sides of the road. No lights, no buildings, just dark water and cypress trees. I figured I'd miscounted the exits in the storm. Easy to get disoriented when you can barely see through the rain. But then I passed what should have been the Raceland exit. And instead of the familiar cluster of fast food restaurants and gas stations, there was a sign that read, "Welcome to Boudreaux Landing, population 342. I'd never heard of Boudreaux Landing, and I'd grown up in this area. I knew every small town between New Orleans and Thibodaux. My GPS had been acting up since the storm started. The screen kept flickering between my route and what looked like a map of waterways, like I was in a boat instead of a car. The voice kept giving directions to roads that didn't exist. In 0.3 miles, turn left onto Bayou Noir Road. There was no Bayou Noir Road on Highway 90. I tried calling my mother to tell her I was running late, but my phone showed no signal. That wasn't unusual in rural Louisiana during storms. But when I looked at the screen, it displayed the wrong time. 3:47 a.m., even though my car clock showed 12:53 a.m. The rain was getting worse, and I started seeing things in my peripheral vision that couldn't be there. Boats moving through the swampland beside the highway, even though we were miles from any navigable water. Old-fashioned paddle wheelers with lights in their windows, like something from the 1800s. I slowed down, thinking maybe the grief and exhaustion were making me hallucinate. But when I focused directly on the boats, they were gone. Only when I wasn't looking straight at them could I see them gliding silently through water that shouldn't exist. The road signs were becoming increasingly bizarre. Lafitte's Landing, 12 miles. Port of New Orleans, 8:47 miles. That made no sense. New Orleans was behind me, and it definitely wasn't 8:47 miles away. I'd left from there an hour ago. Then I saw the exit sign that made my blood freeze. Thibodaux, 2 miles. But I'd been driving for hours. I should have reached Thibodaux long ago, and the landscape was all wrong. Instead of the familiar suburban sprawl leading into town, I was surrounded by deep swamp. Ancient cypress trees draped with Spanish moss stretched as far as I could see, their roots disappearing into black water that reflected my headlights like oil. I took the exit because I didn't know what else to do. But the ramp led down instead of up, descending below what should have been the water level. The road continued straight into the swamp, supported by what looked like a causeway made of weathered wooden pilings. This was impossible. There was no causeway to Thibodaux, no swampland this deep, no road that went underwater. But I was driving on it, my tires splashing through puddles that shouldn't exist on an elevated roadway. The town I reached wasn't Thibodaux. The sign said Thibodaux, but this place looked like it was from the 19th century. Gas lamps instead of street lights, wooden buildings with wide porches, dirt roads instead of pavement, and boats. Everywhere there should have been cars, there were boats, tied up to posts, moored to docks that extended from every building. People moved through the streets, but they were dressed wrong, like extras in a period movie. Long dresses, top hats, clothes that belonged in a history book. They walked slowly, deliberately, and when my headlights swept across them, they turned to watch my car with expressions I couldn't read from a distance. I drove through the town looking for anything familiar, any landmark that would tell me where I really was. But every street led to water, every road ended at a dock or a pier. This wasn't just the wrong Thibodeau. This was a Thibodeau that existed in the wrong century, in the wrong reality. My gas gauge was reading empty, which was impossible. I'd filled up before leaving New Orleans, and I'd only driven for a couple of hours. But the needle was firmly on E, and my low fuel light was blinking. I pulled up to what looked like a general store, the only building with lights on. A man came out wearing overalls and a hat that looked like something from a daguerreotype. He approached my car with the slow, measured pace of someone who had all the time in the world. "Evening, miss," he said, tipping his hat. His accent was thick Cajun, but different somehow, older. "You look lost." "I'm trying to get to Thibodeau," I said, "for my father's funeral." The man's expression grew sympathetic. "Ah, you here for a funeral? That makes sense. The roads, they change when someone pass on. Lead you where you need to be, not where you think you're going." "I don't understand." "Your papa, he from the old Thibodeau? The one that was here before the new one took its place?" I stared at him. My father had been born in Thibodeau in 1952, had lived there his entire life except for a brief stint in the army. But this man was talking about Thibodeau like there were multiple versions of it. "Miss, you in the between place," he continued, "where all the old things go when the new things replace them. Your papa, his spirit got to make the journey through the old places before he can rest. And sometimes, family got to make that journey too. That's impossible. A lot of things impossible until they happen to you." He gestured toward the water surrounding the town. "This, the Thibodeau your papa knew as a child, when his grandpère told him stories about the old days, before the highways, before the progress. This, where he learning to fish, to hunt, to be a man." I looked around at the impossible town, the period costumes, the boats where cars should be. How do I get back to the real Thibodeau? "You got to go through first. Follow the water road to the old cemetery. Pay your respects to the ancestors. Then the new road will open for you." He pointed toward what looked like a bayou disappearing into the darkness beyond the town. "Follow that waterway 3 miles. You'll see the lights. I can't drive on water. Your papa's spirit will carry you. He wants you at his funeral, so he'll make sure you get there." I wanted to argue, to insist this was all some kind of hallucination brought on by grief and exhaustion. But my car was running on empty in a place that shouldn't exist, and I'd been driving for hours through a storm that had somehow transported me into the past. What happens if I don't follow the water road? The man's expression grew sad. "Then you stay here, with all the other lost souls who couldn't find their way back to the living world. We got plenty of company, but it ain't no place for someone young like you." I looked around and realized that some of the people I'd seen moving through the streets weren't quite solid. They had a translucent quality, like old photographs superimposed on reality. The dead outnumbered the living in this place, and they were all waiting for something. "The cemetery," I said. "How will I know when I've found it?" "You'll know," the man said. "And miss, when you see your papa there, you tell him Baptiste said goodbye." What we thought was a random act of kindness turned into the most calculated psychological torture I've ever experienced. And the worst part is realizing he'd been planning it for months. Sometimes the person standing on the side of the road knows exactly which car is going to stop and exactly who's inside it. So this is Sienna, and I need to get this story out because what happened to me, Emberly, and Melina last summer is still messing with my head. We were these typical college seniors, you know. Best friends since freshman year at ASU, about to graduate, feeling invincible and ready to take on the world. We'd planned this epic road trip to California as our last hurrah before real life kicked in. Everything started normal enough. We rented a convertible, loaded it with snacks and playlists, and hit the road from Phoenix on a Saturday morning in June. The plan was to drive scenic routes, stop at random places, take a million photos, and just celebrate being young and free. Typical girl trip stuff. We were cruising through the Arizona desert on this empty highway, top down, music blasting, having the time of our lives. The landscape was gorgeous in that harsh, unforgiving way. Red rocks and endless blue sky. The kind of scenery that makes you feel like you're in a movie. That's when we saw him. He was standing beside a broken-down pickup truck about 50 yards off the highway, thumb out, looking exactly like every parent's warning about hitchhikers. Tall, maybe early 30s, wearing jeans and a faded band t-shirt. Dark hair, decent looking. But something about his smile seemed off. Too practiced, like he'd rehearsed it. "Should we stop?" Melina asked from the driver's seat. She was always the cautious one, pre-law, planned her outfits a week in advance. "Are you crazy?" Emberly said from the back seat. "Horror movie 101. Never pick up random guys in the desert." But I felt sorry for him. It was probably 105 degrees out there, and we hadn't seen another car in 20 minutes. "Look at him, he's gonna die of heat stroke. Besides, there's 3 of us, and 1 of him." Famous last words, right? Melina pulled over against her better judgment, and the guy jogged up to the car with this grateful expression that seemed totally genuine. "Thank God," he said, slightly out of breath. "I've been standing out here for 2 hours. My truck overheated and my phone's dead. I just need a ride to the next town so I can call a tow truck." He had this nice voice, polite, educated, not what you'd expect from a creepy hitchhiker. And honestly, he was pretty cute, the kind of guy any of us might have talked to at a college party. "I'm Jake," he said, extending his hand. "And you 3 are absolute lifesavers." We introduced ourselves, and he climbed into the back seat next to Emberly. Within 5 minutes, he had us all laughing with stories about his disastrous road trip, how he'd already gotten lost twice, eaten at the world's worst diner, and now his truck was dead in the middle of nowhere. "This is exactly why I usually fly everywhere," he said with a self-deprecating laugh. "I'm clearly not built for adventure travel." He seemed so normal, so harmless. Just a regular guy having a bad day who'd gotten lucky when 3 college girls decided to be good Samaritans. About 15 minutes into the drive, Jake suggested we play a game to pass the time. "It's called Secrets," he explained. "Everyone takes turns sharing something true about themselves that nobody else knows. Nothing too heavy, just interesting stuff. It's a good way to get to know each other." "That sounds fun," I said. We were young and stupid, and thought sharing secrets with a stranger would be exciting and spontaneous. Jake went first. "Okay, here's mine. I've been following you three for about 200 miles. We all laughed because we thought he was joking. Like, what were the odds that this random hitchhiker had been behind us on the highway? No, seriously, he continued, still smiling but with something different in his eyes now. I've been tracking your route since you left Phoenix. Your Instagram posts are very detailed, Sienna. Lots of location tags, photos with landmarks in the background. Easy to figure out where you were headed. The laughter died in my throat. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram, scrolling back through the posts I'd made that morning. Photos at our hotel, breakfast at a specific diner, a selfie at a scenic overlook with a highway sign visible in the background. You've been following our Instagram? Melina asked, her voice getting tight. All three of your accounts, actually. For about 6 months now. You're very active on social media, very open about your lives. Emberly was already digging in her purse for her phone. That's super creepy, dude. We're pulling over right now. Actually, you're not, Jake said calmly. And that's when I noticed he was holding something in his right hand. A small knife, not threatening exactly, but visible. Because we're going to finish our game first. My turn was sharing a secret. Now it's Melina's turn. The temperature in the car seemed to drop 20 degrees. This wasn't a random encounter. This wasn't a broken-down traveler needing help. This was planned, calculated, deliberate. How long have you been planning this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Since February, Jake replied matter-of-factly. When Emberly posted about your graduation road trip plans. You three share everything online, your schedules, your routes, your personal details. Do you know how easy it is to learn someone's entire life from their social media posts? He was right, and I knew it. We posted constantly. What we ate, where we went, who we were with, how we felt about everything. Our lives were open books for anyone with an internet connection. Melina, Jake said, his voice taking on a harder edge. Your secret. Something true that your friends don't know. I'm not playing this sick game, Melina said, but her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Sure you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to share some secrets of my own. Like the fact that you've been stealing money from the campus bookstore where you work. Small amounts, nothing anyone would notice, but it adds up to about $2,300 over the past year. Melina's face went white. How could you possibly know that? Your bank records are interesting reading. Lots of small cash deposits that don't match your official pay stubs. And your roommate's very chatty when she drinks. She mentioned it at a party last month. Thought it was funny that perfect Melina was skimming money. I felt sick. He hadn't just been following our social media. He'd been researching us, investigating our lives, talking to people who knew us. What do you want from us? Emberly demanded. I want to play the game. I want to hear all your secrets, the real ones you hide behind your Instagram filters and Facebook posts. The messy, ugly, honest parts of your lives that you don't share with your 1,000 followers. And if we don't? Jake's smile got wider. Then I share what I know with everyone. Your families, your friends, your future employers. Your dirty laundry becomes very public very quickly. He turned to Emberly. Your turn. Tell us about the professor you've been sleeping with for better grades. Dr. Brosum Martinez from your advanced marketing class. Married guy, 2 kids. Very against university policy. Emberly started crying. You're insane. How do you know about that? Hotel receipts are public record when they're paid for with university credit cards. And you two aren't as discreet as you think. Several people have noticed the pattern. This was psychological torture, weaponized information, privacy turned into a weapon. He'd spent months learning our vulnerabilities, our mistakes, our shameful secrets, and now he was using them to control us. My truck isn't really broken down, Jake continued conversationally. It's parked at a rest stop about 10 miles back. I've been waiting at that exact spot for 3 days, knowing you'd come this way, knowing you'd stop. Because I know you, Sienna. I know you're the bleeding heart who can't pass someone in need. I know Melina is cautious, but will defer to her friends. I know Emberly talks tough, but folds under pressure. What's your endgame? I asked. What do you get out of this? Power, he said simply. Control. The satisfaction of proving that privacy is an illusion, and trust is just weakness waiting to be exploited. You three live your lives online, sharing everything, trusting everyone. I wanted to show you what happens when someone pays attention. He leaned forward between the seats. Now, Sienna, your turn. Tell us about your abortion last year, the one you hid from your religious parents, the one you told everyone was just a miscarriage. That's when I realized we weren't just victims of some random predator. We were examples, test subjects in his twisted experiment about digital vulnerability and social media oversharing. And the worst part was, he was right about everything. Time stopped working somewhere between mile marker 127 and our mounting realization that we'd been driving the same stretch of road for 6 hours without moving forward an inch. What should have been the perfect honeymoon drive through the Canadian wilderness became our introduction to a highway that exists outside the normal flow of reality. I'm Amani, and my husband Bristol and I have been married for exactly 8 days when this happened. We're both the practical type. He's an engineer. I work in finance. So when I tell you what we experienced defies every logical explanation we could think of. Understand that we exhausted every rational possibility first. Our honeymoon was supposed to be simple and romantic. Drive from Calgary to Vancouver through the Canadian Rockies, stay in little mountain towns, see some incredible scenery, and just enjoy being newlyweds. We'd planned every stop, booked every hotel, and had backup routes mapped out in case of construction or weather. We're planners by nature, which made what happened so much more terrifying. The drive started perfectly. Left Calgary at 8 a.m. on a beautiful Tuesday morning in September. Perfect weather, car running great. Both of us excited about our first trip as a married couple. The scenery was absolutely stunning. Snow-capped peaks, endless pine forests, crystal clear lakes that looked like they belonged on postcards. We were taking Highway 1 through Banff National Park, a route I'd driven twice before for work conferences. Beautiful road, well-maintained, plenty of scenic pullouts and small towns. Nothing unusual or challenging about it. About 3 hours into the drive, just past Canmore, Bristol noticed something odd. Babe, didn't we just pass that same rest area about 20 minutes ago? He asked, pointing to a wooden sign that read, Whitetail Creek Rest Area, 2 kilometers. I looked at our GPS. According to the display, we were making steady progress westward, currently at kilometer marker 127. No, this is the first time I've seen that sign. Maybe there are multiple rest areas with similar names. Bristol shrugged and kept driving. He's methodical about everything, so when he notices details, he's usually right. But the GPS showed us moving forward normally, and the scenery kept changing. Different mountain peaks, different forest compositions, different cloud formations. 23 minutes later, we passed the exact same sign again. Amani, I'm serious. That's the same rest area. Same sign, same placement, same little dirt road leading off to the right. This time I paid closer attention. The sign was distinctly weathered in a specific pattern. A dark stain running down from the top left corner, a small dent on the bottom right edge. Very specific, very memorable details. I checked our GPS again. Still showed us at kilometer marker 127, still indicated we were moving west at 90 kilometers h. That's weird, but maybe the GPS is glitching. Let's just keep track of our fuel and see how far we actually travel. We both started paying very close attention to landmarks after that. Bristol began calling out distinctive features as we passed them. A dead tree shaped like a Y, a boulder with white quartz veining, a particularly sharp mountain peak with what looked like a face profile. 18 minutes later, we passed the same dead tree. "Stop the car," I said. Bristol pulled over at the next safe spot. We both got out and looked around. The landscape was identical to what we'd been seeing for the past hour. The same forest, the same mountains, the same angle of sunlight through the trees. "Check your watch," Bristol said. I looked at my phone. 11:47 a.m. We've been driving for almost 4 hours, but according to this, we should be halfway to our lunch stop in Golden. My watch says 11:47 too. But look at the fuel gauge. The gas tank showed 3/4 full, exactly where it had been when we started noticing the repeated landmarks. We should have used at least a quarter tank by now. "The odometer," I said suddenly. Bristol checked. 186,047 kilometers. The same reading it had shown when we left Calgary. We got back in the car and continued driving, but now we were both focused entirely on documenting what we were seeing. Bristol started timing the intervals between landmarks, while I took photos with my phone. The pattern was consistent and impossible. Every 19 to 23 minutes, we'd pass the same sequence of landmarks in the exact same order. The Whitetail Creek sign, the Y-shaped dead tree, the boulder, the face profile mountain peak, a red barn barely visible through the trees, a small wooden bridge over a creek, then back to the Whitetail Creek sign. "This is physically impossible," Bristol said after we'd completed the loop for the 6th time. "We're driving in a straight line on a major highway. There are no curves sharp enough to create a circle, no hidden off-ramps, no way to end up back where we started." I was taking notes on my phone, documenting everything. The sun isn't moving either. Look at the shadows. They're exactly the same angle they were 2 hours ago. And there are no other cars. When's the last time you saw another vehicle on a major Canadian highway? He was right. In 4 hours of driving, we hadn't seen a single other car, truck, motorcycle, or even an airplane overhead. Just us, the empty road, and the same rotating landscape. We tried calling for help, but neither of our phones had any signal. Not unusual in remote areas, but unsettling given everything else that was happening. "Let's try something," Bristol said. "Next time we reach the rest area sign, I'm going to turn off onto that dirt road. Maybe we can break out of whatever this loop is." When we reached the Whitetail Creek sign again, Bristol took the turn off. The dirt road led about half a kilometer through dense forest before ending at a small parking area with picnic tables and an outhouse. Nothing unusual, just a typical highway rest stop. But when we drove back to rejoin the highway, we emerged exactly where we'd been before, at kilometer marker 127, with the same GPS reading, the same fuel level, the same time on our phones. "We need to test something else," I said. "Stop the car completely. Turn off the engine." Bristol pulled over and shut everything down. We sat in complete silence for exactly 10 minutes by my phone's timer. The forest around us was eerily quiet. No bird sounds, no insects, no wind through the trees. When Bristol started the car again and we resumed driving, we immediately began encountering the same landmarks in the same sequence, as if the 10-minute stop had never happened. "What if we get out and walk?" I suggested. We parked the car and walked about a kilometer down the highway on foot. The road continued normally, curving around mountains and through forest. But when we turned around and walked back to where we'd left the car, it wasn't there. We were standing on an empty stretch of highway, with no sign of our vehicle anywhere. "This can't be happening," Bristol said, but his voice was tight with fear now. We walked back in the direction we'd come, and after about 10 minutes, we found our car sitting exactly where we'd originally parked it, engine running, doors open, as if we'd just stepped out of it. "I'm a rational person," I told Bristol as we got back in the car. "I believe in physics and cause and effect and logical explanations for everything. But we're trapped in some kind of temporal loop on a highway that shouldn't exist. What do you think happens if we just keep driving? Do we run out of gas eventually? Do we age? Do we die of starvation?" Those questions terrified me more than the loop itself. If time wasn't working normally, if we were somehow outside the regular flow of reality, then all the normal rules might not apply. We could be stuck here forever, driving the same 20-kilometer stretch of highway for eternity. "There has to be a way out," I said. "Every loop has an exit condition. Every puzzle has a solution." We tried everything we could think of over the next several cycles. Driving backwards, driving with our eyes closed, stopping at different landmarks, getting out and rearranging objects we found on the roadside. Nothing changed the pattern. The breakthrough came when Bristol noticed something I'd missed. "The license plates," he said suddenly. "What?" "On our car. Check the license plates." I got out and looked. Our Alberta plates read BDX 7431, just like they should. But when I looked more closely, I noticed something impossible. The registration sticker showed an expiration date of September 2019. We'd gotten married in September 2023. "Bristol, what year is it right now?" He looked at his phone, then at mine. Both showed the date as September 15th, 2019. We weren't just trapped in a spatial loop. We were trapped in time itself, stuck in a version of this highway that existed 4 years in the past, before we'd ever met, before we'd fallen in love, before we'd planned our honeymoon drive. "How do we get back to our own time?" I whispered. Bristol took my hand. "I don't know. But whatever happens, we're together. At least we have that." The highway stretched endlessly ahead of us, timeless and inescapable. And we kept driving toward a destination we'd never reach. The helpful rest stop attendants who offered to watch my car while I took my kids to the bathroom turned out to be part of something much darker than roadside assistance. When you're a single parent traveling alone with children, you become a target for predators who know exactly how to exploit your vulnerabilities and trust. My name is Armando, and I'm a single father to 2 boys. Cassius, who's 7, and Kaysen, who's 5. Their mother died in a car accident when Kaysen was just 2, so it's been just the 3 of us for the past 3 years. I work construction in Houston, and we don't get many chances for vacations. But last summer, I managed to save enough for a camping trip to Big Bend National Park. The boys were so excited. They'd been talking about it for weeks, making lists of things they wanted to see, practicing setting up our tent in the backyard. For me, it was a chance to give them some good memories. Some father-son time away from the stress of work and bills and trying to raise 2 kids on my own. We left Houston early on a Saturday morning, my old Ford F-150 loaded with camping gear and enough snacks to feed an army. The boys were in great moods, playing games and pointing out everything they saw along the highway. It felt like we were finally doing something right as a family. About 4 hours into the drive, we were on a long stretch of Highway 90 west of San Antonio when Cassius announced he needed to use the bathroom. I'd been pushing to make good time, and we were still about 2 hours from our planned lunch stop in Del Rio. "Can you wait a little longer, buddy?" I asked, checking the GPS for rest areas. "I really can't, Daddy. It's an emergency." Kaysen immediately chimed in that he needed to go too, because that's how it always works with kids. One bathroom request triggers another. I spotted a sign for a rest area about 5 miles ahead and told the boys to hang on just a few more minutes. The rest area turned out to be one of those larger facilities with a visitor center, multiple buildings, and what looked like a small convenience store. Perfect for a quick stop to stretch our legs and grab some drinks. The place was busy for a Saturday afternoon. Several families with kids, a few truckers, some elderly couples stretching their legs. It had that typical rest area atmosphere where everyone's focused on their own business, but generally friendly and relaxed. As we were getting out of the truck, a woman in a uniform polo shirt approached us. She looked to be in her 40s, Hispanic, with a name tag that said, "Rosa, Customer Service." "Afternoon," she said with a warm smile. "Y'all look like you're on a family adventure." "Camping trip to Big Bend," I said, helping Kaysen down from the truck. "These guys needed a pit stop." "Oh, that's wonderful. Big Bend is beautiful this time of year." She knelt down to the boys' level. "Are you excited about your camping trip?" Cassius and Kaysen both nodded enthusiastically and started telling her about all the things they wanted to do. Hiking, fishing, seeing stars without city lights. Rosa listened with genuine interest, asking questions and making the boys feel important. "You know what?" she said, standing back up. "I hate to mention this, but we've been having some issues with break-ins in the parking lot lately. Had 3 vehicles broken into just this week. If you'd like, I can keep an eye on your truck while you're inside. It's part of our enhanced security service." I looked around the parking lot. It seemed safe enough, but I had all our camping gear visible in the truck bed, plus my laptop bag in the front seat. The last thing we needed was to have our vacation ruined by thieves. "That's really nice of you," I said. "Are you sure it's not too much trouble?" "Not at all. We want our visitors to feel safe and comfortable. You just go ahead and take care of your business, maybe grab some snacks for the road. I'll make sure nobody bothers your vehicle." It seemed like genuine customer service, the kind of extra effort that makes you want to leave positive reviews online. Rosa appeared professional, knowledgeable about the area, and clearly experienced at dealing with traveling families. "Thank you so much," I said, grabbing my wallet in the boys' hands. "We shouldn't be more than 10 or 15 minutes. "Take your time," Rosa replied. "And if you need any recommendations for restaurants or activities in the Big Bend area, just ask when you come back out." The boys and I headed into the main building, which housed restrooms, vending machines, and a small gift shop with typical tourist items. While the boys used the bathroom, I bought some waters and let them each pick out a small toy as a travel treat. We were probably inside for about 20 minutes total. The boys wanted to look at everything in the gift shop, and I let them take their time since we weren't on a strict schedule. It felt good to see them excited and happy. When we came back outside, I immediately noticed something was wrong. Our truck was still parked where I'd left it, but Rosa was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a man standing near the driver's side door, looking into the cab. He was tall, probably in his 30s, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Nothing about him screamed rest area employee. "Excuse me," I called out as we approached. "Is there a problem with my truck?" The man looked up and smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "No problem at all. Just admiring your setup. Nice truck, good camping gear. You must be heading somewhere special." "We're fine, thanks." I moved between him and my boys, feeling my protective instincts kick in. 3 males traveling alone, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Father and 2 sons, by the look of it. That's a valuable cargo for certain people. The casual way he said, valuable cargo, made my skin crawl. I grabbed both boys' hands and started backing toward the rest area building. Daddy, what's wrong? Cassius asked, picking up on my tension. Nothing's wrong, buddy. We're just going back inside for a minute. But as I turned around, I saw Rosa walking toward us from the building. And she wasn't alone. 2 other men flanked her, both looking like they belonged in a police lineup rather than providing customer service at a highway rest area. Leaving so soon, Armando? Rosa asked. And the fact that she knew my name, which I'd never told her, sent ice through my veins. How do you know my name? Your registration was visible through your windshield. Armando Gutierrez, Houston address. And these must be Cassius and Kaysen. She smiled at my boys, but now it looked predatory rather than warm. We need to go, I said, trying to keep my voice calm for the kids' sake. Actually, I don't think you do. Rosa nodded to the men with her. See, we've been watching your family since you pulled in. Single father, 2 young boys, out-of-state plates, camping gear that suggests you'll be in remote areas for several days. You match a very specific profile. Profile for what? For people nobody will miss right away. Travelers who won't be expected anywhere for days. Families without a mother to raise alarms when phone calls go unanswered. I felt like I was going to throw up. These weren't rest area employees. They were predators who used the rest area as a hunting ground, targeting vulnerable families. There are other people here, I said, looking around desperately. Other families, witnesses. Are there? Rosa asked. Look around carefully. I did, and my heart sank. The parking lot that had been busy 20 minutes ago was now nearly empty. Just our truck, a white van I didn't remember seeing before, and 1 other car. The families with children, the elderly couples, the truckers, all gone. We work with the afternoon shift supervisor. One of Rosa's companions explained conversationally. He helps us identify suitable targets and clear the area when necessary. Amazing how quickly people can be encouraged to move along when there's a gas leak or maintenance emergency. What do you want? I asked, though I was terrified to hear the answer. We want you to get in the van, Rosa said simply. You and your boys, quietly, cooperatively, without making a scene. And if we don't? Rosa pulled back her jacket slightly, revealing a handgun tucked into her waistband. Then we'll have to be less polite about it. And your boys might see things that would give them nightmares. Cassius was starting to cry, sensing the danger even if he didn't understand it completely. Kaysen was clinging to my leg, burying his face against my jeans. Please, I said, whatever this is about, whatever you want, just let my kids go. They're innocent. Innocent children are exactly what our clients prefer, Rosa said matter-of-factly. Clean backgrounds, no behavioral problems, young enough to adapt. You'd be surprised how much demand there is. Human trafficking. They were human traffickers who used highway rest areas to identify and capture victims. Traveling families, especially single parents with children, were perfect targets because they could disappear for days before anyone started looking. How many families have you taken? I asked, buying time while trying to figure out any possible escape. Dozens over the past 2 years. This location is perfect. Isolated, lots of through traffic, minimal security cameras. Most people who stop here are travelers just passing through, so when they disappear, the investigation happens hundreds of miles away. The man standing by my truck walked over to join the group. Vehicle's clean, no tracking devices, Nothing suspicious? Ready to proceed. Excellent. Rosa looked at me expectantly. Time to go, Armando. Walk to the van calmly, get your boys settled in the back. Make this easy on everyone. That's when I heard the sound that saved our lives. The rumble of a motorcycle engine. The vintage radio in our grandfather's 1967 Mustang started picking up emergency broadcasts from decades past. And following those ghostly warnings led us straight into the same deadly trap that claimed other drivers years before. Sometimes the past reaches out to drag you back. And the voices of the dead aren't trying to help. They're trying to add you to their collection. I'm Zachariah. And this happened to me and my younger brother Ford last winter when we were driving our recently deceased grandfather's car from Denver to our family home in Grand Junction. Pop had passed away in November, and the Mustang was one of the few things he'd left us in his will. A pristine 1967 fastback that he'd restored himself and barely ever drove. Ford was 19, home from his first semester of college, and I was 23, working as a paramedic in Denver. We'd both been close to Pop, spent summers working on cars with him in his garage, listening to his stories about the old days when he was a mechanic for the Colorado State Patrol. The plan was simple. Drive the Mustang back to Grand Junction where our parents lived, then decide what to do with it long term. Neither of us wanted to sell it, too many memories. But we couldn't afford to keep a classic car in good condition on our budgets. We left Denver on a Friday afternoon in early December, planning to take our time and enjoy the drive through the mountains. The weather forecast looked good. Clear skies and dry roads, perfect conditions for a nostalgic cruise in Pop's pride and joy. The Mustang ran like a dream. Pop had maintained it meticulously, and everything worked exactly as it should, except for the radio. The original AM/FM unit would occasionally pick up strange signals, distant voices speaking in formats and codes that sounded more like old police or emergency dispatches than regular radio programming. That's weird, Ford said about an hour into the drive, as we were climbing into the mountains on I-70. Listen to this. He'd been fiddling with a radio dial and had picked up what sounded like a weather emergency broadcast. Heavy snow warning for Vail Pass and Loveland Pass. Visibility near zero. Multiple accidents reported. All non-essential travel advised to delay until conditions improve. Colorado State Patrol recommends alternate routes through... The transmission faded into static. But we could see clear blue skies ahead of us. No sign of any weather problems. Must be picking up some old recording or something, I said. Pop always said this radio had quirks. Ford continued scanning through the stations, but most of what we picked up was either normal contemporary radio or more of those strange emergency broadcasts. They all had an old-fashioned quality to them, like they were from decades ago. Different terminology, different call signs, different procedures than modern emergency services. As we approached the Eisenhower Tunnel, the radio crackled to life again with a clear, urgent voice. This is Colorado State Patrol dispatch to all units in the I-70 corridor. We have reports of black ice conditions east of the tunnel, multiple vehicle accident at mile marker 218. Recommend all eastbound traffic exit at Silverthorne and take alternate Route 9 south to avoid the hazard area. I looked at our GPS. We were approaching mile marker 218, but the road conditions looked perfect. Clear pavement, no ice, light traffic moving normally. Should we take the exit? Ford asked. I mean, what if there really is black ice ahead that we can't see? Pop always said to trust your instruments over your eyes when driving, I replied. If the radio's picking up current emergency traffic, maybe we should listen. We took the Silverthorne exit and followed Route 9 south. a winding mountain road that would eventually reconnect with I-70 near Frisco. It was a beautiful drive through snow-covered pine forests, but it added about 30 minutes to our trip. About halfway through the detour, Ford managed to tune in a news station with a clear signal. The traffic report mentioned no accidents or hazardous conditions on I-70 through the Eisenhower Tunnel area. So, either that radio broadcast was wrong, or it was from some other time entirely, I said. Or it prevented an accident that would have happened if we'd stayed on I-70, Ford suggested. Maybe we were supposed to be the accident at mile marker 218. It was an unsettling thought, but I tried to dismiss it as coincidence and paranoia. Old radios picked up strange signals sometimes. There were probably logical explanations for everything we were hearing. We rejoined I-70 near Frisco and continued west without incident. The radio remained quiet for the next hour, just static and occasional fragments of normal programming. I was starting to relax and enjoy the drive when the emergency broadcasts started up again. Multiple vehicle collision on I-70 westbound, mile marker 133, near Vail Pass. Road completely blocked, estimated clearance time 4 to 6 hours. State Patrol recommends all westbound traffic exit at Vail and take Highway 24 south through Leadville to reconnect with I-70 near Glenwood Springs. This time, I checked multiple sources. Our GPS showed no traffic delays ahead. My phone's traffic app indicated normal flow through Vail Pass. The highway information signs we passed showed no warnings or alternate route recommendations. "This is getting really strange," Ford said. "These broadcasts are incredibly detailed and specific, but they don't match current conditions at all. Maybe the radio's picking up training exercises or something. Emergency services do practice scenarios." But as we approached mile marker 133, I started having second thoughts. The broadcasts had been completely accurate about locations and route numbers, even if the hazards they described weren't currently present. And Pop had always been obsessive about safety, especially mountain driving in winter. "What do you think Pop would do?" I asked Ford. "He'd take the safe route every time. Better to be late than sorry." We exited at Vail and followed Highway 24 south toward Leadville. This detour was much longer, probably adding 2 hours to our trip. But the mountain scenery was spectacular, and it felt like we were honoring Pop's memory by being cautious. The radio continued providing detailed route guidance as we drove, almost like having a personal traffic coordinator. For vehicles taking Highway 24 detour, be advised of construction delays near Leadville. Recommend continuing south to Highway 82 and approaching I-70 through Glenwood Canyon. We followed those directions, winding through some of the most beautiful mountain roads in Colorado. Ford started keeping a log of all the radio instructions, noting the times, locations, and recommended routes. "Look at this pattern," he said as we stopped for gas in Glenwood Springs. "Every single broadcast has directed us away from major highways and onto back roads. We've been detoured around I-70 3 different times now." He was right. What should have been a 4-hour drive on interstate highways had turned into an 8-hour journey through remote mountain passes and small mining towns. "And look at the timestamps I wrote down," Ford continued. "These broadcasts aren't random. They're perfectly timed to catch us just before we reach each location they're warning us about." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "You think something's been guiding us?" "I think Pop's radio knows something we don't." We got back on I-70 for the final stretch to Grand Junction, but within 20 minutes, the radio crackled to life again. "Emergency vehicles responding to fatal accident, I-70 westbound mile marker 87, Glenwood Canyon. Road closure expected until morning. All traffic advised to exit at Rifle and take Highway 13 north to I-80, then west to connect with I-84 toward Utah. This route would take us hundreds of miles out of our way, through Wyoming and back down into Utah. It would turn our day trip into a 2-day odyssey. "That's insane," I said. "We're only 30 miles from home." But Ford was already pulling up news websites on his phone. "Zachariah, look at this. There was a fatal accident at mile marker 87 in Glenwood Canyon. But it wasn't today." He showed me the screen. The article was from December 15th, 1987. Exactly 35 years ago to the day. A 2-car head-on collision during a blizzard had killed 4 people and closed I-70 for 18 hours. That's impossible. The radio can't be picking up broadcasts from 1987. Can't it? Pop bought this car in 1967. He installed this radio himself, used original parts, kept everything authentic. What if it's somehow tuned to the same frequencies that were used back then? I pulled over at the next rest area, and Ford continued researching on his phone. Every single emergency broadcast we'd heard corresponded to actual accidents and road closures, but all from decades in the past. The black ice warning near Eisenhower Tunnel, January 12th, 1978. The Vail Pass collision, March 8th, 1983. The construction delays near Leadville, summer of 1974. "The radio's not predicting current hazards," Ford said quietly. "It's replaying old emergencies. But it's replaying them as if they're happening now, on the exact anniversary dates." So we've been following ghost instructions all day, driving routes to avoid accidents that happened before we were born. But here's the really scary part, Ford continued, scrolling through more search results. "Look at this pattern of accidents along I-70. Multiple fatal collisions, all involving young men driving classic cars, all happening on December 15th in different years." He showed me the headlines. 2 brothers die in I-70 crash, 1995. Father and son killed near Glenwood Canyon, 2003. College student's fatal accident, vintage Mustang, 2011. "Every 8 years, I whispered. It's 2019. We're right on schedule." That's when we realized the radio hadn't been protecting us from danger. It had been herding us toward it. They stood perfectly still at the tree line, mile after mile, never moving, never blinking, always watching my motorcycle cut through the Maine wilderness at midnight. What I thought was my imagination playing tricks became a coordinated hunt when I realized they were communicating with each other, closing in every time I wasn't looking directly at them. Name's Soren, and I've been riding motorcycles for 15 years, done cross-country trips through every state except Alaska. I'm comfortable on back roads, comfortable with solitude, comfortable with the kind of night riding that most people won't attempt. But what happened to me on Route 9 through Washington County, Maine, changed everything I thought I knew about being alone on the road. This was supposed to be the final leg of my coast-to-coast journey. Bar Harbor to Seattle, taking the scenic route through places most tourists never see. I'd been on the road for 3 weeks, camping when the weather was good, staying in cheap motels when it wasn't, just me and my 2018 Harley-Davidson Road Glide putting miles behind us. Maine in September is beautiful, but unpredictable. Days can be warm and sunny, nights can drop into the 40s with fog rolling in from the Atlantic. I'd planned to reach Bar Harbor by evening, but a mechanical issue in Calais had cost me half a day. And by the time I got back on the road, it was already past 10 p.m. Route 9 between Calais and Bar Harbor is about as isolated as highways get in the eastern United States. 90 miles of 2-lane blacktop through dense forest, with maybe a dozen small towns and not much else. Perfect for night riding if you don't mind being alone with your thoughts and the sound of your engine. The first hour was exactly what I expected. Empty road, towering pines on both sides, occasional glimpses of lakes reflecting moonlight. My headlight cut a bright tunnel through the darkness, and I settled into that meditative state that long-distance riders know well. That's when I started noticing the figures. At first, I thought they were just trees or rocks at the forest edge, the kind of shapes that your brain interprets as human when you're tired and riding through unfamiliar territory. But as I passed mile marker 67, I saw one clearly in my peripheral vision. A tall, thin silhouette, standing motionless about 20 feet back from the road. I slowed down and looked back, but saw nothing except trees and darkness. 5 miles later, another figure. This time on the opposite side of the road, same general size and shape, standing in the same watchful pose. Again, when I stopped and looked directly at the spot, nothing was there. By mile marker 55, I was seeing them regularly. Always at the edge of my vision, always perfectly still, always positioned like sentries watching the road. But every time I focused on one directly, it vanished. I stopped the bike completely at a scenic overlook near Aurora and sat in silence for 10 minutes, listening to the engine cool and trying to rationalize what I was experiencing. Fatigue, probably. Eye strain from riding in darkness. The brain's tendency to create patterns and see familiar shapes in random visual data. But when I started riding again, the watchers were still there. And now I was paying closer attention to details. They were all approximately the same height, maybe 6.5 feet tall. They all stood in identical poses, arms at their sides, facing the road. And they all appeared at regular intervals, roughly every half mile, alternating between the left and right sides of the highway. Most unsettling of all, they seemed to be tracking my movement. As I approached each position, the figure would be facing forward. As I passed, I could sense it turning to follow my progress, though I never caught one actually moving. Around Cherryfield, about 30 miles from Bar Harbor, something changed. Instead of solitary figures, I started seeing pairs. 2 watchers on the left side of the road, 2 on the right, all maintaining their vigil at the forest edge. I tried taking photos with my phone at the next stop, but the camera flash illuminated nothing except trees and undergrowth. Whatever I was seeing either wasn't physically there or didn't show up in photographs. Then I noticed something that made my hands shake on the handlebars. The watchers were getting closer to the road. What had started as figures 20 feet back in the forest had progressed to 10 feet, then 5 feet. By the time I reached Deblois, they were standing right at the tree line, close enough that I should have been able to see them clearly in my headlight beam, but I couldn't. They remained visible only in my peripheral vision, vanishing the instant I looked directly at them. I started testing this phenomenon systematically. I'd spot a watcher ahead, focus on maintaining awareness of it while looking slightly to one side, then quickly turn my head to look directly at it. Every single time. The figure disappeared the moment my direct gaze reached its position. Near Columbia, I tried a different approach. Instead of looking directly at the watchers, I pulled out my phone and used its camera as a mirror, holding it so I could see behind me while continuing to ride forward. What I saw in that small screen made me nearly lose control of the motorcycle. There were dozens of them following me, a silent procession of tall figures walking down the center of the road in single file, maintaining perfect formation about 50 yards behind my bike. They moved with an odd, gliding gait that didn't quite look human. Covering ground faster than should have been possible on foot, I accelerated, pushing my Harley up to 80 miles per hour on the winding forest road. When I checked the phone screen again, the followers had not only kept pace, they'd closed the distance. That's when I understood that this wasn't some hallucination brought on by fatigue or isolation. These things whatever they were real, coordinated, and hunting me. I reached for my phone to call 911, but there was no cell signal. Not surprising in rural Maine, but frustrating when you desperately need help. The nearest town, according to my GPS, was Columbia Falls, still 15 miles ahead. The watchers at the forest edge were now standing in groups of 3 and 4, positioned every quarter mile instead of every half mile. And they were no longer content to simply watch. As I passed each group, they would step onto the road behind me, joining the growing procession that followed my bike. Using the phone as a mirror had become impossible because there were too many of them to count. The entire road behind me was filled with tall, silent figures moving in perfect synchronization, like some nightmarish parade that stretched back into the darkness. I was running out of road. Bar Harbor was still 25 miles away, my fuel was getting low, and the watchers were closing in from all sides. Ahead of me, I could see more figures emerging from the forest to block the highway. That's when my engine started sputtering. The Harley had been running perfectly for 3 weeks and 1,500 miles, but now it was losing power, coughing and hesitating like it was running out of gas. But the fuel gauge showed a quarter tank remaining. I managed to coast to a small gravel pullout near what looked like an abandoned logging road. The engine died completely as I came to a stop, and suddenly the forest around me was absolutely silent. No wind, no insect sounds, no rustling of leaves, just perfect, oppressive quiet. I tried restarting the bike. The starter motor turned over, but the engine wouldn't catch. I tried again and again, growing more desperate with each failed attempt. That's when I heard the footsteps, not the normal sounds of people walking on pavement, but something else. A soft, sliding shuffle, like feet that didn't quite touch the ground. The sound was coming from all around me, from the road behind, from the forest on both sides, from the logging trail ahead. I grabbed my phone and turned on its flashlight, sweeping the beam around the pullout. Nothing, just gravel and weeds and the dark mouth of the logging road. But when I turned off the light, they were there. Dozens of tall figures standing in a perfect circle around my disabled motorcycle, close enough that I could have reached out and touched them. They were completely motionless, arms at their sides, faces turned toward me. I couldn't make out any details of their appearance. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, like shadows given form and substance. But I could feel their attention focused on me with an intensity that was almost physical. I tried the motorcycle again. This time the engine caught, roared to life, and I didn't waste a second. I dropped the clutch and shot forward, straight at the gap between 2 watchers blocking the logging road. As I passed between them, I felt something brush against my jacket. Not quite solid, but definitely there. Cold air that moved like fingers, trying to grab hold of me as I accelerated into the darkness. The logging road was rough and narrow, barely wide enough for my bike, with branches scraping against my helmet and shoulders. But it led away from Route 9, away from the watchers, toward what I hoped was another way out of the forest. After what felt like miles of blind riding through increasingly dense woods, I saw lights ahead. Real lights, electric street lamps, and the glow of buildings. The logging road emerged onto a residential street in what my GPS identified as Ellsworth, about 15 miles south of where I'd been trapped. I didn't stop until I reached the first all-night diner I could find, where I sat shaking over coffee until sunrise, trying to process what had happened. The next morning, I drove back to Route 9 in daylight, looking for any evidence of the previous night's encounter. The pullout where I'd been surrounded was there, but it showed no unusual tire tracks, no footprints, no signs that dozens of figures had gathered in that spot. But there was one thing that convinced me I hadn't hallucinated the entire experience. My motorcycle's odometer showed 37 additional miles that I couldn't account for. The exact distance I would have traveled if something had been following me, step by step, for the entire journey through the Maine wilderness. The GPS coordinates for the massive highway accident led me deeper into an abandoned mining town where no accident had occurred, and I slowly realized I wasn't there to save anyone. I was there to become the next victim. Sometimes the call for help is really a call to join the others who answered before you. And once you cross that final mile, there's no going back. My name is Zayden, and I've been a paramedic for 12 years. I've seen everything. Car crashes, overdoses, heart attacks, shootings, domestic violence calls that haunt your dreams. But nothing in my experience prepared me for what happened 6 months ago on what should have been a routine emergency response. I was working the night shift for rural county EMS, covering the territory between Bakersfield and the Nevada border. It's a huge area, mostly desert and small towns, where response times can be brutal and you're often the only medical help for 50 miles in any direction. I've always preferred night shifts. Less traffic, fewer politics, just you and the radio and people who genuinely need help. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Multiple vehicle accident with fatalities. Coordinates placing it on Highway 395, about 40 miles northeast of Ridgecrest. The dispatcher's voice was tense, professional, but I could hear the urgency underneath. Unit 47. We have reports of a major collision, at least 3 vehicles involved. Possible entrapment and multiple trauma patients. Fire department and additional units are en route, but you're closest to the scene. Unit 47 responding. I replied, already pulling on my gear and heading for the ambulance. ETA, approximately 35 minutes. Highway 395 through that area is desolate even during the day. Long stretches of desert highway, with nothing but Joshua trees and abandoned mining claims. At night, it's like driving through the void. Perfect conditions for high-speed accidents when someone falls asleep at the wheel or tries to pass on a blind curve. I made good time through the empty desert, pushing the ambulance as fast as I dared on the winding mountain roads. The coordinates the dispatcher had given me were leading toward an area I'd never been to before, up in the hills east of the main highway. About 20 miles out, I started noticing something odd. The GPS was directing me off Highway 395 onto increasingly smaller roads. First, a 2-lane county road, then what looked like an old mining access route. The pavement gave way to gravel, then to dirt and rock. Dispatch Unit 47, I radioed. I'm being routed onto some pretty rough terrain here. Can you confirm the location coordinates? Unit 47, coordinates confirmed. Follow your GPS to the scene. Other units report similar routing. That was reassuring. If fire department and additional EMS were taking the same route, then the accident must really be in this remote location. Probably someone took a wrong turn and ended up on the old mining roads, which could be treacherous at night. The road climbed steadily into the hills, winding between rocky outcrops and abandoned mining equipment. I passed several old buildings, weathered wooden structures that looked like they'd been empty for decades. Ghost town stuff, the kind of place that had probably thrived during the gold rush and been forgotten ever since. My GPS indicated I was getting close to the coordinates, but I wasn't seeing any signs of an accident. No flashing lights, no fire trucks, no other emergency vehicles. Just empty road disappearing into darkness. Dispatch, Unit 47. I'm at the GPS coordinates, but I don't see any accident scene. No other emergency units visible. Static. Then, Unit 47. You should be able to see the scene from your current position. 3 vehicles, significant damage. Fire department already on scene. I stopped the ambulance and got out, scanning the area with my flashlight. Nothing. No vehicles, no accident debris, no emergency lights. Just an empty dirt road, surrounded by desert scrub and the ruins of old mining buildings. Dispatch, I'm not seeing anything here. Are you sure about these coordinates? Unit 47, we show you directly on top of the accident scene. Can you see the overturned semi-truck? There was no semi-truck. There was nothing except me, my ambulance, and a ghost town that looked like it had been abandoned since the 1940s. I walked around the area for 10 minutes, checking every direction, looking for any sign of fresh tire tracks or vehicle debris. The only tracks I found were from my own ambulance and what looked like several other emergency vehicles. Deep tire prints in the dirt that suggested fire trucks and additional ambulances had been here recently. But where were they now? And where was the accident they'd supposedly responded to? Dispatch, Unit 47. I need clarification on this call. I'm at the coordinates you provided. I can see tire tracks from other emergency vehicles, but there's no accident scene and no other units present. Long pause. Then a different voice came on the radio. Older, male, with an odd accent I couldn't place. Unit 47, this is command. Please proceed to the old mining office building and report your status. I looked around and spotted what could have been an office building. A 2-story wooden structure with broken windows and a partially collapsed roof. It was about 100 yards from where I'd parked. Command Barry, that building appears to be abandoned and unsafe. What's the nature of this request? Unit 47, we have personnel inside who need immediate medical attention. Please proceed to the building and make contact. This was getting stranger by the minute. But if there were injured people inside, I had a job to do. I grabbed my medical bag and walked toward the building, using my flashlight to navigate around debris and broken glass. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and my light revealed an interior that hadn't been occupied in decades. Dust, cobwebs, and animal droppings covered everything. The floorboards were rotted through in several places, and most of the windows were broken. "Hello," I called out. "This is EMS. Is anyone in here?" My voice echoed through the empty building, but there was no response. I climbed the stairs carefully, testing each step before putting my full weight on it. The second floor was in even worse condition, with a massive hole in the roof and most of the floor joists exposed. But in what had probably been the main office, I found something that made my blood run cold. Medical equipment. Recent medical equipment. There were IV bags hanging from makeshift poles. Cardiac monitors sitting on dust-covered desks, drug kits and intubation supplies arranged on a folding table. Everything looked like it had been set up recently, but it was all covered with a thin layer of dust, as if it had been sitting there for weeks. Command Unit 47. I'm in the building and I found medical equipment, but no patients and no other personnel. What's going on here? Unit 47. You're exactly where you need to be. Please remain at your current location. Command, I need clarification on this situation. Where are the other emergency units? Where are the accident victims? That's when I heard voices coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Distant, muffled, but definitely human voices. I followed the sound down a hallway lined with doors to smaller rooms. The voices were coming from behind a door marked Records. I tried the handle, locked, but the voices were clearer now, and what I heard made me step back from the door. They were radio transmissions, Emergency radio traffic, like what I'd been hearing all night. But these were different calls, different accidents, different dates going back years. Unit 23 responding to vehicle rollover. Highway 14 near Mojave. Unit 31, cardiac arrest at residence on Pine Street. Unit 47 responding to multiple vehicle accident, coordinates, Unit 47. That was my unit number. But the voice wasn't mine, and the date stamp was from 3 years ago. I tried the door handle again, and this time it opened. Inside was a room full of radio equipment. Multiple base stations, recording devices, computers showing maps and GPS coordinates. And sitting at the main console was a figure in an EMT uniform. He turned around when I entered, and I saw my own face looking back at me. "You're early," he said calmly. "Most responders take longer to find this place." I stumbled backward, but the door had closed behind me and wouldn't open. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "I'm you, Zayden. From 3 years ago. The first time you responded to this call." He gestured to the radio equipment. "This is where emergency responders come when they answer calls that never really happened. This is impossible." "Is it? How many times have you responded to accidents that weren't there when you arrived? How many times has dispatch given you coordinates that led to empty roads?" I thought about it and realized he was right. Over the years, there had been dozens of calls like that. We always assumed they were prank calls, system glitches, or accidents that had cleared before we arrived. Every emergency responder who answers one of these phantom calls ends up here eventually. The other me continued. It's like a collection point for people who've dedicated their lives to helping others. A place where the need for help never ends. How many others are here? 47 so far. EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, police officers. All of us thought we were responding to routine calls. All of us found this place instead. I looked around the room more carefully and saw them. Other figures in emergency services uniforms, sitting at various stations, monitoring radios, dispatching phantom calls to their living counterparts. What happens to the real me, the one working tonight? He keeps working, keeps responding to calls, keeps helping people. But part of him is here now, making sure the system keeps running. And if I refuse? The other me smiled sadly. There's no refusing, Zayden. You're already here. You became part of this the moment you answered that first phantom call 3 years ago. Everything since then has just been the process of bringing you home. I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me, like a weight I'd been carrying was finally being lifted. All those nights of stress, of being the only help available in impossible situations, of carrying the responsibility for other people's lives. It was over. "Welcome to the last mile," he said, handing me a radio headset. "Now you get to be the voice that calls for help instead of the one who answers it." Outside, I could hear my ambulance starting up, driving away without me, heading back to a life I was no longer part of. If you're ever driving alone at night and you see emergency vehicles heading somewhere they shouldn't be, remember this story. And if you're an emergency responder who gets calls to places that don't exist, be careful which ones you answer. Some calls are meant to bring you home. Don't forget to subscribe to Verified Fears for more terrifying true stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about reality. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content. And remember, the most frightening stories are often the ones that could happen to anyone.